In this video I want to look at a topic called dietary hygiene, and this was a term that I first learned about 20 years ago from one of my teachers, and it really opened my eyes to the fact that there is much more to eating healthy than just what we put on our plate. Most people tend to think, well, I'm eating healthy if I'm eating the right food, if I'm eating lots of fruit and veggies and I'm not eating sugar and whatever. And that is all really important. However, there is much more to what is healthy when it comes to food. And it's not just what we eat, but how we eat and what our dietary habits are. So what I'd like to do is to go through and just share a few dietary hygiene tips, and you can just pick out which ones resonate for you. Maybe some of these will be new, you may not have thought of them before, and then you can choose whether you change something in your dietary hygiene habits. Now, first of all, I've learned from several teachers the importance of eating slowly and mindfully and chewing very slowly and thoroughly. And the reason for this is that in theory, and actually in practice, we should be chewing our food until it is liquid before we swallow it. And I remember one of my first Qigong teachers saying, well, why do you think you have teeth in your mouth? They're not in your small intestine, they're in your mouth, and they're designed to be used in your mouth. So we're meant to chew our food very, very thoroughly, at least, it is said, 25 times. So can you imagine sitting down to a meal and for every mouthful you consciously and mindfully chew your food 25 times or until it is liquid? Now, another reason for doing this is that carbohydrates start to be processed in the mouth. So if we don't process our carbohydrates by chewing thoroughly, then they get swallowed and they're not as digestible. Whereas protein, for example, is digested in the stomach with the stomach acid, and therefore we don't have to necessarily chew our protein as well, although actually we should still be chewing everything and creating a liquid before we swallow. So that's number one tip that you might like to consider and try practicing. The second one is it's really important to sit down when you eat. Now, this may sound really obvious and maybe you already do it, but a lot of people are eating on the run. Literally, they'll be walking down the street eating a sandwich, or maybe they're driving in their car and yes, they're sitting, but they're doing something else at the same time. Or maybe they're standing at their kitchen bench and eating. Now, as you become more aware of what it feels like inside your body to be stressed and to be calm, and as you become more aware of the state of relaxation or stress that your digestive system is in, you're going to become more aware of the difference inside your body if you're sitting versus standing to eat. And personally, I find it very uncomfortable to stand and eat. My body does not like it. Now, this makes sense. We need to, as we talked about in the previous module on self-care, we need to respect our bodies and we need to give them what they need rather than just do what we want. And in order for our body to function and our digestive system to function and do its job of digesting our food, it has certain requirements. And these requirements include chewing properly and sitting down and not focusing on anything else while we're eating. How often do we sit, or you see people sitting and eating and they're on their cell phone, they're on their computer, they're reading a book, they're watching television, they're talking. This takes away vital energy and attention from our digestive system to do its job properly. Now, you don't have to believe anything I say. What I invite you to do is to go away and try some of these things out and to notice the difference inside your body. I remember at a Qigong training many years ago where the teachers would take an hour to rest after eating. A whole hour of doing nothing, just lying down and resting after eating, so that the body could do its job of digesting the food. How many of us do that? Not only are we rushing and eating at our desk and eating on the run, as soon as we finished our meal, we then go out and we get back into doing what it was we were doing before, and that then puts the body back into the stress response, and the body can't do its digesting job properly if it's in the stress response. The body needs to be in the relaxation response in order to digest food properly. So it's really important to make sure that we have enough time for our meals, which is another tip. How much time do you leave for your meals, your meal breaks? Now, as I shared in one of the other videos, I used to take 10 or 15 minutes to have my lunch, but that wasn't enough. That was rushing my body. And so I started to change that habit and to make myself take half an hour, and then I built it up to an hour to have that time to eat and slowly enjoy my food, put my attention on my food, and really enjoy the act of eating. Because often we can be very distracted while we're eating because either we don't have much time or we're sitting with other people talking or whatever it is. And that will take away from the body's ability to do its job of digesting our food properly. So try it. Try these new habits and notice the difference that you feel inside your body as you do things differently. Now, another habit is to have gratitude for your food before you eat it, which often is called blessing the food. Now, this is a very common habit in spiritual traditions. For example, in India, always if you go to an event with a spiritual teacher, they will always bless the food before eating it. Now, we can do that by ourselves. We can sit down and we can look at that food, smell that food, take in the beauty of what is on the plate, and thank every piece of food on the plate. And not only thank the food, but thank where it came from. Think of the people that it took to actually grow that food and to nurture that food and to harvest that food, and then the people who sold you that food. There is so much to be thankful for. And as we do that, alchemy starts to happen because everything is interconnected, and whether you believe it or not, we're connected with everything, including the food on our plate. And that will start to really make a difference of how our food is digested. So take time to look at your food and bless your food and thank your food before eating it, and notice the difference that it makes. And we can also do this while we're cooking. We can be blessing and thanking and connecting with our food while we're cooking. And then we can even do that while we're growing our food, is to be creating a greater connection with our food as we grow it. And not that I've done this, but there is a practice where you can, as you plant seeds, you put the seed in your mouth first and you cover it with your saliva, and then you plant the seed. And then the seed is so intelligent, it knows how to adapt itself to what you need, because it can tell what is, for example, missing maybe in your saliva, in your enzymes. And it will actually change how that food is grown. So there is so much more that we can do to become self-aware and change our eating habits. Now, another really important tip is to eat locally and eat with the seasons. What that means is you eat what is locally grown and what is grown during that time of the year. Now, in our shops these days, you've probably noticed it, you go into the fruit and veggie shop and there will be pineapples in the middle of winter from some foreign country, or mangoes, or whatever the food is. Now, for a start, that food has come from a country. It's probably been sprayed with herbicides and pesticides, especially in New Zealand, to actually even get into the country. I remember a natural therapy practitioner telling me once that you would be horrified if you saw the vats of herbicides and pesticides or whatever that fruit and vegetables are put in before they're allowed onto the shelves in New Zealand. So we have to remember that if we're buying food from overseas, firstly, it was most likely picked unripe, which means it does not have the goodness in it that a ripe vegetable or fruit will have. And it's probably also been sprayed with herbicides and pesticides, unless it's organic, of course. And then coming into the country, even if it is organic, it's been, sprayed with herbicides and pesticides or whatever it is that they do. And therefore, it is not going to be healthy. We need to eat locally in harmony with the seasons. And that will help us because nature is very intelligent. It grows what we need at the time of the year that we need to eat it. So I highly recommend that if you're buying things, from overseas that are not grown at that time of the year, when you're buying them locally, then question, do I really want to eat this food? And how healthy is it really going to be for me? Now, another handy tip, which you need to play around with and find out what is right for you, is to find out what is the best rhythm for me to eat. Now, some people say that it's really good to eat at a regular time, the same time every day. So, for example, I have breakfast at 8 o'clock, lunch at 1 o'clock, dinner at 5 o'clock, whatever it is. So you really have to play around and find out, well, what is right for you, what suits your digestive system, because everyone will be different. And we also need to play around with, well, is it best that I have 3 meals a day, which is, quite a common belief? Or is it better that I only have 2 meals a day and that maybe I skip breakfast? And this has become quite a common thing at the moment, intermittent fasting, where you only have meals, say, between a 5 or a 6 or an 8 hour span during the day, and then you fast the rest of the time. And again, the way to know what is right for you is to do a trial and error and see how your body responds and how you feel. Now, another important thing is to learn the temperatures of food, and I don't mean hot or cold in terms of is it heated up or is it, straight out of the fridge. What I mean is, from a Chinese medical perspective, every food, well, it's not just Chinese, but the Chinese use this as a model, and it's very valuable. Every food has a temperature, an innate temperature. So, for example, lettuce is cold, whereas peppercorns or cayenne pepper or something like that is hot. And that is the effect that it's going to have inside the body. Now, everybody has a different temperature inside of them in terms of their makeup. And this makeup comes from the 5 elements, the 5 elemental forces of nature. Now, my elemental makeup and my propensity is to have too much damp in my body, which means it's not good to eat food which is dampening, such as yogurt or such as bananas, right? It's better for me to eat food which is really going to fire up my digestive system and support it. Now, unless I know the temperatures of the foods from a Chinese medical perspective, I'm not going to know this. And often we can think, oh, I'm eating healthy because I'm eating yogurt and banana. But if yogurt and banana are both dampening and they're increasing the damp in my body, then it's not actually healthy for me. So I really recommend getting a great Chinese medical cookbook. For example, there's one by David Leggett, and checking out what are the temperatures of foods, but also you need to find out what is it that I need. And the only way to find that out probably is by going to a Chinese medical practitioner, acupuncturist, or Chinese medical herbalist, and finding out, what are the habits of my body, what are the propensities, what is it that I need to increase, what is it I need to decrease, and you can explore that and work on that and see what difference it makes to eat the right temperature foods. Now, speaking about temperature, very obvious thing, please don't use microwaves to cook your food. Microwaves destroy food. Yes, it still comes out of the microwave, but the quality of the food has been seriously reduced and weakened. So if you're still using a microwave, even if it's to heat water or milk, I'd really invite you to question that and do some research yourself on what actually happens when food and drink is microwaved. I ditched my microwave years ago and I don't miss it. Now, another really interesting topic on food is understanding the Meridian Timetable. And I have a post in the program on the Meridian Timetables with a download, so you can go and check that out. But we have these energy pathways inside our body which switch on and off at different times during the day. And so learning to eat in harmony with when these meridians are coming on and off, so to speak, can also help our digestion. Now, for example, in the morning, 5, 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, is our spleen stomach meridian. And so we need to honor the energetics of this meridian, which is obviously very connected with digestion. And this is why it's so important in the morning to get up and to ease into our day and to eat very quietly and to have a quiet start to the day and to sit and eat by ourselves, perhaps, not to have too much talking with other people. Now, a lot of people don't do this. They get up in the morning, everything is very, very hectic, they rush out the door, and this is immediately impacting the digestive system in a negative way. So we need to be mindful of these rhythms which are going on inside our body so that we can work with them rather than against them. So look at the module on Meridian Timetable in the program and you can find out more about that. Now also remember that our nervous system can either be in the sympathetic nervous system response, the SNS, or it can be in the parasympathetic nervous system response, which is PNS, or as I like to call it, relaxation. And there is a separate video on this in the program, so go and check that out. But what is important about this is understanding that our digestive system needs to be in a relaxed state in order to do its function properly. When we're in the stress state, that means that the body feels it's under threat and it's diverting blood away from the organs, the major organs, to the extremities in order to deal with what it feels is a perceived or maybe even a real threat. When our body is in that state, it is impossible for the digestive system to do its job properly. And this is why it's really important to become more aware of when am I stressed and when am I relaxed. And for example, if you're sitting down to eat a meal, really tune in. How am I feeling right now? Am I in the stress response or am I in the relaxation response? And if you're in the stress response, then do something before you start eating to get yourself into a more relaxed state. Now, obviously, there are lots of strategies and techniques to do that in the program, whether it's the breathing techniques or other techniques. So make sure that you do that so that you give your digestive system the opportunity to be able to digest your food as well as you would like. Now, on the subject of drinking, apart from what is healthy to drink and what is not healthy to drink, obviously sugary drinks, lots of caffeine, alcohol, etc., not good for the body. Good quality water is good for the body. But one thing that people tend to do, and this is a particularly American habit, is to have lots of ice in their water or their drinks. Now, when we drink icy cold water, it puts out the digestive fire in our body. And it is especially not good to drink lots of liquids at the same time as eating. But one of the worst things we can do is to have an icy cold drink while we're eating, and to follow follow down our food with ice cold drinks. So if you do that, I invite you to change that habit and see what difference it makes. Now, the interesting thing is there is a difference between what we think is good for us, or what we feel is good for us through our senses, through our eyes, and noticing what is actually really good for us by tuning into the feedback our body gives us. I'll give you an example. I love eating salads. I absolutely love salads. Lettuce, tomatoes, cucumber, whatever it is, I love salad. I love putting it in my mouth. I love crunching it up, chewing it. I get a lot of enjoyment from eating a salad. And one would think a salad is healthy. However, since I've become more aware of what my body needs and likes, I've noticed that when I put hot, soupy meals in my body gives me an immediate feedback through a sort of an internal sigh of gratitude and enjoyment that actually my body likes the hot, soupy meals. And really what I've discovered is that my eyes, my senses, more enjoy the cold foods, and my mouth enjoys it, but my stomach doesn't like it. Whereas as soon as I eat anything hot, either hot temperature or innate quality hot, my body really likes that. So one of the things that I invite you to do is to start noticing the difference between when your body or your stomach really enjoys what you're putting into it, as opposed to what you're enjoying just purely in your mouth and through your outer senses, the eyes, the nose, etc. So that is quite a subtle thing to start noticing, but it will make a difference. Now, another really important thing to do from time to time, and even regularly, is detoxification. And there are many ways that we can do that. But our body and our digestive system need a rest from having to digest. Now, we can do these detoxifications. We could do like a long one, say 3, 5, 10 days or whatever. Once a year is a good amount of time, maybe even twice a year. But we can also do it weekly. We can choose to take a day off eating solid food, 1 day a week, and just have juices. Now, this really is very, very beneficial for our digestive system, as it allows things to clear out. We can also take detoxification supplements, and there are many different kinds of detoxification programs and formulas on the market. Again, just find out what works for you. And I will put a link to anything that I personally like in this module. But it is really important and very beneficial to do regular detoxification, which goes hand in hand with some form of fasting. But you'll need to explore that on your own. That is not what we're going to go into detail in this program. I prefer that you go to an expert, such as a naturopath or a nutritionalist, etc., and find out what is right for you. But I just want to bring this topic to your attention if you've not thought of it yet. Now, also really importantly, we have to remember that if we have emotions inside of us, they are going to contribute to stress, and that will affect our whole mind-body system. So it's not just food and drink that we need to detoxify from, we need to detoxify our emotions. And as I talk about in depth in the emotional training programs, different emotions are stored in different organs and affect different organs. For example, anger affecting the liver, which is why we say, I was livid with anger, right? When we have trapped and built up and stored emotions inside of us, then that energy will be impacting our organs and tissues at a cellular, level, and it will impede the functioning of those organs and tissues. And this is why it is so important to know how to self-clear and self-process emotions. So we'll be talking about that briefly in one of the modules in this program, but if you really want to dive deeply into that, then look at the level 1 and 2 and 4 programs from the Emotional Alchemy Academy, which deep dive into self-processing and clearing emotions. So these are just a few tips of what I call dietary hygiene. There is much more that one can say on the topic, but this will give you a great start into maybe looking at things differently, trying some things differently, and noticing the difference that it makes. And the main thing really is to start noticing how your digestive system feels when you do whatever it is that you do. And if you notice the contraction and the tension and even the distension and the bloating that we can get if our digestive system is out of whack, then start looking at what can I change in my dietary hygiene to assist my digestive system to work better, which will reduce the overall stress in your body.